Have you ever been blindsided by something so painful it knocked the wind out of you? Maybe it was a loss, a betrayal, a diagnosis, something that split your life into a before and after. If so, you're not alone and you're not broken. You're simply human. Today's episode is about what resilient people know and do and how your nervous system plays a bigger role than you might think. Welcome to the Building Resilience Podcast, episode 230, What Resilient People Do.
Welcome to Building Resilience, a podcast where theory, practical strategies, and inspiring stories show you how to unlock your best life. I'm your host, Leah Davidson. As a certified life coach, speech-language pathologist, and nervous system resilience expert, it is my mission to teach you how to be more resilient to life's adversities. I will show you how to manage your mind, befriend your nervous system, process your emotions, and even eliminate stress. It's time to do more than just survive. It's time to thrive. Let's get started.
Today's episode is inspired by a TED Talk that I absolutely love. If you listen to the podcast long enough, you'll know how much I love TED Talks. I will often refer to them. I use them a lot in therapy sessions with my SLP clients. It's a great way to practice memory skills and listening skills and summarizing skills, and just great to discuss them all. Now, some of them I just find interesting and others are really inspiring, and this one was both. It's by Lucy Hone, who is a resilience researcher from New Zealand. So obviously anything resilience pulls me in. So in her talk, she shared 3 powerful lessons about resilience. Ones that she didn't just study, but had to live after her 12-year-old daughter was killed in a car crash. Now, I've watched this talk more times than I can count. And while Lucy's story is her own story, the lessons are universal. And today, I want to share those 3 lessons, and I'm also going to add a couple of other lessons and add the lens of the nervous system over these lessons. Because what I know to be true is that resilience lives in your body, your healing, your heartbreak, your ability to rebuild. It's all running through the same system, your nervous system. So let's dive in. The first lesson she shares is that resilient people know that crap happens. Now, she uses another word, but to keep this episode clean for the podcast, I'll just replace it with the word crap. She says resilient people accept that suffering is part of life. They don't necessarily feel singled out. They're not saying, why me? They actually are often saying, why not me? Because hard things happen to all of us. And here's where the nervous system comes in. Your nervous system, we've talked about before, is designed to keep you alive. It's there for your survival. It's scanning 24/7 for cues of safety or danger. And that's the process that's called neuroception. Now, we've talked about neuroception again on a whole episode. I think it was back on episode 125, so go check that one out. So we are scanning. We're looking for safety. And if we don't find it, we are going to get ready to go into protection mode. When you go through something painful, whether that's a loss, a betrayal, a trauma, or even just some kind of uncertainty or unfamiliarity, your nervous system kicks into a survival state. It senses that you're in danger, and so if you're in danger, you need to go into protection mode. So this can look like that fight or flight that we often talk about. I refer to it as team hyper, because you're in a hyper aroused state. So it can come across as anxiety or anxious thoughts and irritability and restlessness, maybe even like racing heart, sweaty palms, or anger, defensiveness, overthinking, worrying. See, there's a lot of things that come under the umbrella of team hyper. Or team hypo is another protective response. That's that collapsed shutdown state. And it can be seen as numbness or fatigue or disconnection or hopelessness or helplessness or sadness. Or you can have a combination of hypo and hyper, which is more of a freeze state, where it's kind of like that tired but wired feeling. And it can be referred to as like hitting the gas while you're also hitting the brake. And then we can also even engage in things like people pleasing, or maybe you've heard to that referred to as fawning. So it can happen in either a team hyper state or in a team hypo state. It's just nuanced a little bit differently. But this can look like people pleasing or avoiding conflict or abandoning yourself. Now, these are not flaws. They're not bad behaviors. They are intelligent biological responses designed to help you survive a threat, even if that threat is only perceived or only emotional. Now, what you really want to take in here is you're not broken. Your body is actually doing what it's wired to do. And when you understand that, then you can start building some self-compassion. And that is the first layer of resilience. So the next lesson or thing that Lucy suggests in her TED Talk about resilient people is that they choose where to focus their attention. Now, we are hardwired to notice what is wrong, and this is called that negativity bias. And it makes sense when you think about survival, because it's better to notice the threats, that like a tiger is about to eat you, than to notice that beautiful rainbow. However, we also know that your nervous system doesn't know the difference between a real and perceived threat. It doesn't know the difference between a real tiger and a stressful email. It's going to react in the same way. And that is why we can constantly feel like we're on edge, like there's no off switch to flip. Resilient people, they actually work at shifting their attention. So it's not about ignoring the hard, but it's about making sure to include the good. I refer to it as equal airtime. So making sure that yes, you address the hard parts, but you can also look and include the good. In nervous system language, we can really talk about this in terms of building capacity to handle the hard. You're not bypassing grief. You're widening that zone of resilience, that zone of safety, so you can hold both grief and gratitude, pain and beauty, anguish and awe. One way that we can do this is by using what we call bottom-up tools. So bottom-up tools are tools that start in the body first. And using these tools, what it does is it sends messages of safety from the body to the brain. So some examples are using your breath, specifically the exhalation, breathing slowly out through the mouth, which engages your parasympathetic nervous system through the vagus nerve. And the parasympathetic nervous system is that rest and digest state, which gets us to that zone of resilience, that zone of safety. Another tool you could use is grounding. You could do grounding through your senses. So that is using your sense of touch and smell and sound, which will help you get into the present moment instead of spiraling into the past or worrying about the future. Now, a third tool is journaling. Journaling is a great way to get out all the feels, to get into the zone where you just write, where you just mind dump and unload what is going on, and that you use your writing skills, that flow, that rhythm of writing to release some of that tension. And then lastly, doodling. It is a way to gently regulate, and it shifts your focus. It activates more creative areas of your brain. Now, all these tools will help calm that sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight, that team hyper that I refer to, and invite in the parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest, or I refer to it as team resilient. This is where we can access safety and connection. And again, it's not about being positive all the time. It's about giving your body some new data. It's about saying there still is safety. There still is some good. I am still here in the present moment. Now, the third lesson that Lucy suggests in her TED Talk is to ask, is what I'm doing helping or harming me? I love this question because it's simple, it's accessible, and it gives us choice. And Lucy shared how she used it in her darkest moments, like when she was deciding whether to go to the court about the drunk driver who hit her daughter, or whether to look at photos of her daughter, or whether to let the grief just drown her. So from a nervous system lens, this is more of a top-down regulation strategy. You're re-engaging your prefrontal cortex, your CEO, as I call her, that part of your brain responsible for reflection and planning and awareness. Because remember, when we are dysregulated, that part of our brain, that CEO, will often go offline, and we will end up acting out of habit or fear. But when we take a pause and take a breath and ask, is this helping or harming me? What we're doing is we are inviting that wise CEO brain to come back online. And you can use this question or a variation of this question on a daily basis. It's really a great one to ask, even when it's about smaller things. Like, is this conversation helping or harming my peace? Is this scroll session soothing me or overstimulating me? Is this thought keeping me stuck or helping me move forward? Because remember, your nervous system can't heal in a state of constant overwhelm. So this one question brings you back into a state of agency, and agency is healing. So I wanted to add a couple of other lessons or strategies that I think are helpful about resilient people. Resilient people learn to befriend their nervous system. Your nervous system isn't the enemy, it's actually your most valuable resource. Resilient people learn how to work with it and not against it. They notice their patterns, or they start to notice their patterns. They understand what cues safety for them and what doesn't. And they stop trying to mindset or think their way out of stress and survival. Now, one of the tools I teach inside my resilience journal, which, by the way, if you haven't gotten it, it's available on Amazon and inside my memberships, is called the safety sequence. The safety sequence is a simple 3-step process to help your body come back to a sense of safety in real time. I actually created a whole other video on it, so you might want to go check that out on YouTube. So the safety sequence, it's a quick, simple 3-step system that gets you to establish safety, to acknowledge and validate how you are feeling, how your body is responding, and then get you to regulation through relaxing your body. Because when you learn how to access safety in the moment, you actually create the foundation for healing. Now, that does not mean you will never get triggered. And it does not mean that you aren't going to experience adversity and go through challenges. And it does not mean that you're not going to experience grief and pain. A regulated nervous system does not mean that you're going to bypass the human experience. But what it does mean is that you know how to return to safety. At least you have a path of how to return to safety. You know how to process grief and express all the human emotions without the fear that they're going to completely hijack you and take over. And that's what befriending your nervous system is all about. It's about building that trust within yourself that you have a pathway home. Now, the 5th thing or lesson that resilient people know is that they don't have to do it alone. I think this is a huge one, and one that is often overlooked. We are wired for connection, not just on an emotional level, but biologically. Your nervous system regulates through co-regulation first, which means that we learn how to feel safe by being with other people who are regulated, who are attuned, and who are safe themselves. Think of like a calm friend that you have that steadies you, or a teacher who really sees you, or a group where you can share and feel like you can just exhale. Resilient people let themselves be seen and heard and helped. They reach out even when it's hard. They stop white knuckling all the way through it alone. So whether it's a support group, a therapist, or a journaling community, connection creates regulation. That's why I built my memberships, because we're not meant to do this alone. We're not meant to do healing work in isolation. We thrive when we're seen and we're witnessed and held and encouraged. And we build resilience faster together. If I've learned anything, it's that you don't have to choose between healing and grieving. You can honor both. You can hold both. You can honor your pain and still build practices that help you feel grounded. You can let yourself break and fall apart and still decide to stand up and rebuild and have hope. You can feel lost and still be guiding yourself back home. That's what nervous system work is. It's not about bypassing or avoiding. It's about building a relationship with yourself, building a relationship with your body. Now, Lucy's work and her TED Talk remind us that resilience isn't reserved for the lucky or the strong. It is actually available to anyone who's willing to pause and to notice and to choose again and again and again. I hope you found this helpful, and I will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Building Resilience podcast. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about managing stress, building resilience, and leading a more purposeful life, then make sure we're connected on Instagram and Facebook at Leah Davidson Life Coaching. You can also subscribe to my weekly newsletter at www.leahdavidsonlifecoaching.com/newsletter. Looking forward to connecting.